Now, Dirk, you were the first human to experience the Diddy Kong adventure, is that correct? And how did you do?
Super Sam Bams.
So recently, I've been playing Diddy Kong Racing for the N64. This is a game that I've owned for years and years, but I never really got into it like I have recently. For me, it was always kind of one of those games where I'd casually play it with friends and leave it at that. I always liked it a lot, don't get me wrong, but I never properly sat down to really dive into this game myself. However, after popping in my original cartridge for the first time in a while and seeing the shamefully small amount of progress I made as a kid, I decided to change that. I think the main reason why I never made it very far in Diddy Kong Racing is because I simply never took the time to actually get good at it. Mario Kart had always been my racing game of choice on the N64, and since I was skilled at it, that game was just more comfortable to go back to whenever I was in the mood for a racing game. I chose what I was familiar with rather than learning the mechanics of a different racing game. On the surface, these two games look incredibly similar, with their cartoony art styles, colorful stages, and even similar items. But it isn't until you pick up a controller that you begin to notice how different these two games truly are. I remember getting stuck really early on in Diddy Kong Racing's adventure mode as soon as I was introduced to the coin missions, which you have to complete in order to advance. In these missions, the player is required to collect 8 coins scattered throughout the track and finish the race in first place. As a kid, I remember thinking, oh, this shouldn't be too hard. I'm only in the first area, and I couldn't get past the first coin challenge, and I didn't touch the game for several years. Yeah, I'm honestly kind of embarrassed to admit that I was that bad at the game. Seriously though, back then it took every ounce of gamer juice in my body to win a race in the opening levels of the game. I couldn't believe that now the developers were expecting me to do this and collect 8 coins. So I know what you're thinking. How the heck did you become the epic Diddy Kong Racing expert that I'm seeing in this footage with my own beautiful eyes? Well, friend, let me give you some tips. So let's say you're playing Mario Kart and there's a sharp turn coming up. What do? You press the R button to drift and wiggle the control stick left and right to get a small boost, right? Okay, so now you're approaching a turn in Diddy Kong Racing. What can you do here? Press the R button and drift around the corner, right? Well, yeah, that works, but it's really only helpful for more gradual curves in the road. This game is full of tight turns and split-second decision-making, so there has to be a better option, right? Well, thankfully there is. If you press B and R at the same time, while still holding A to maintain speed, of course, you perform a super sharp, physics-defying turn. Once you master this maneuver, all of those sharp turns become a breeze. You can even use this to kind of change your angle right before going over a boost pad. And best of all, this technique will have you swiping those hard-to-reach coins without even breaking a sweat. I was shocked by how quickly this move clicked with me. I was even clearing some late game coin challenges on my first or second try. I would usually use the first attempt to memorize where all the coins were, then once I knew their locations, I would have an easier time figuring out the most efficient way to collect them all and win the race. Okay, next tip. If you let go of the A button before hitting a boost pad, you'll get a longer and more powerful burst of speed. This is probably the more widely known trick to gain speed in Diddy Kong Racing, but it's worth mentioning anyway. You'll know if it worked if the flames shooting out of your vehicle are green instead of pink. And for the best results, don't even touch the A button again until you see smoke coming from your vehicle. Pressing the A button early will actually bring you back down to regular speed a lot sooner. And this works for boost items as well. All you have to do is let go of A right before pressing Z to use your item. This can be really useful for closing gaps between you and other racers. And if you're already in first place, there's no harm in using this to get even further ahead of the game, because there's nothing stopping you from grabbing more boost items when you're in first place, unlike Mario Kart where the items you get are actually determined by your rank in the race. At the beginning of each race, you have the chance to start with a small boost as well. When I was a kid, I always tried to hold down the A button like you would in Mario Kart, but in Diddy Kong Racing, all you have to do is tap the A button once at the correct time. The way I gauge it is by the text that appears on screen. The text will begin to fade out, and you'll want to press the A button right before it's completely gone for the best result. You'll know if you got the timing right if the flame behind your vehicle is blue. If you're too early, you'll get a smaller boost with a red flame, and if you're way too early or too late, you'll get no boost at all. My last bit of advice for Diddy Kong Racing is the accelerator trick. In most racing games, you're probably going to keep the accelerate button held down no matter what in order to either maintain or steadily increase your speed. Well, forget what you know about other racing games, because in order to reach higher speeds in Diddy Kong Racing, you'll actually want to be rapidly mashing that A button. This one was kind of hard for me to get used to at first because it really goes against your instincts if you're more familiar with other racing games. And you might not even notice the difference at first, but there are some really good comparison videos out there that I encourage you to seek out if you're interested. A good way to practice this trick is by first of all pressing the right C button to switch the map out for a speedometer in the lower right hand corner of the screen. This gives you a good visual of your speed and is a really good way to track if you're doing this correctly or not. If you're in a car, the general rule of thumb is 4 to 5 presses per second. I usually end up kind of going to the beat of the game's music, and that seems to work well for me since the songs are all set at a pretty quick tempo in this game, but others just mash A as quickly as they can, and that seems to work well for them. So just turn on the speedometer and practice whichever way you find is more comfortable. Apparently, the hovercraft requires you to tap the A button just a bit slower in order for the trick to actually work. I still kind of have a hard time timing this one out, but I've noticed that it works best when you're going straight. If you need to make slight adjustments, that's fine, but usually anything more than that will result in you losing your momentum. Because of this, I usually just play it safe when turning in the hovercraft and just hold the A button, but I can safely say that this trick does work well on straightaways. And finally, this trick works on the plane as well. I feel like the timing for the plane is pretty much identical to the car, so if you get the hang of one, you can easily do the other. And also, I just want to clarify that I'm not a speedrunning expert by any means, but I do find it really fascinating. So I'm going to leave a link in the description for a guy named Tofool, I think that's how you say it, who did a neat little video on this and some other speedrunning strategies for Diddy Kong Racing. Progression in Diddy Kong Racing is handled like a collectathon. Each time you enter one of the game's 5 worlds, you'll be greeted with 4 doors, each containing a stage. After coming in first place on each stage, you'll unlock the boss door. Beat the boss, which usually isn't too bad the first time. Well, you'll see in a bit. Then you unlock the coin challenges, where you go through each stage again, but this time you have to collect 8 coins and finish in first place. Then you fight a more challenging version of the boss. Each world also has a trophy challenge, which is basically a Grand Prix where you go through that world's 4 stages one after another. I like these a lot because from what I can tell, the other racers are a bit tougher in this mode, but you only need to come in first place overall to earn the gold trophy, so you don't have the added stress of being required to finish first in every race. Also, the first 4 worlds each have a key hidden in one of their tracks that unlocks a minigame in the hub world. The minigames are just taken straight from the game's multiplayer mode and are surprisingly really easy. The first one has you collecting dinosaur eggs and waiting for them to hatch in your nest. This one was actually the hardest in my opinion because the CPU players will often steal them from you, but it's more of a minor inconvenience than anything. The second and third minigames are these arena battles where the last man standing wins. The best strategy here is to collect 2 red balloons so you get a homing missile, and honestly just keep doing that until you win. The fourth minigame is basically the same thing, except you need to bring 10 bananas back to your home base, and you can only carry 2 at a time. When I played this one for the first time, I thought my game was glitched because I couldn't pick up any more bananas after I grabbed 2, but as it turns out, I just don't know how to read. Okay, so one thing that I want to go back to really quickly are the bosses, and how I love them and also hate them at the same time. Okay, hate is a strong word. Overall, I really do enjoy the boss fights in this game. The first 2 boss fights aren't that bad. Yeah, they're tough, but they were manageable after a bit of practice. Well, the second fight with the walrus took me a few more tries than I would like to admit, but every boss past that has such a small margin of error that even taking a turn too wide or missing a single item, which are very sparse by the way, will cost you the race, leading to a lot of this. I think that out of all the boss fights, the octopus was the one I had the most trouble with. Making precise movements in the hovercraft is just not easy, and your success in this fight relies heavily on your ability to pick up items, which, as you can probably see from this footage, there are not a lot of, and if you miss even one, your chance of winning is slim. I was actually surprised by how few tries it took me to beat Whizpig the first time. Once you memorize where all of the boost pads are, and can think ahead to which way you need to turn, it isn't really that bad. It wasn't incredibly easy crazy, but once I finally got ahead of him on this run, I was able to create a huge gap in between us and win. And yeah, that's right, I said the first time, because this isn't the only fight with this guy. After winning all 4 trophy races, you can check out this sign here, and the lighthouse turns into a rocket ship and brings you to the final area of the game, which I'm glad I finally unlocked, because this area has some of my favorite tracks in the whole game. The second race with Wizpig is tough, but like the rest of this game, it is completely doable with a bit of practice. The best way to approach it is to use your early attempts to get used to the track and its hazards. Seriously, don't even go in with the intention of winning until you really have a feel for your preferred route, including what items you want to pick up. Boost items will be your best friend in this race because Wizpig recovers from rockets rather quickly, but if you find yourself with a homing missile or two, they are better than nothing. Just don't feel like you need to go out of your way to get them. And always make sure to pick up this invincibility item and use it when you get to this laser room, because you would need some insane luck to fly through here unharmed. Also, don't worry about these UFO things because you can actually just fly straight through them. And like with any boss in this game, always make sure you restart the race whenever you know you're gonna lose in order to save a ton of time. Otherwise, you'll be stuck watching the same cutscene of the boss winning over and over again. Overall, I really enjoyed my time revisiting Diddy Kong Racing. The stages are all unique and memorable in their own N64 chunky, frame rate dropping kind of way. The music is incredibly catchy and in my opinion one of the best soundtracks on the N64. And of course the gameplay is super tight, especially once you get the hang of it. It was well worth getting past that initial learning curve. All of those little tips I talked about at the beginning of this video will really improve your experience with this game once you master them. Sure, some parts of it were a bit frustrating at times, but once I finally overcame those challenges, I truly felt like I had gotten better at this game, which I feel like is something that we kind of take for granted these days. With so many good games coming out every month as it's been lately, it's so easy to just give up on a game if it's too challenging and just go play something else. I'm guilty of this myself, and I'll admit it, I almost didn't make this video because I was having such a hard time with this stupid octopus boss.
Shut up!
But seriously, Diddy Kong Racing has reminded me how good it feels to stick with something even if it's painfully difficult at first. Because if you keep at it, you will get better, and that's why I love Diddy Kong Racing. Hey everyone, thanks for making it through to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't played Diddy Kong Racing before, I really hope you want to give it a try now. If you liked this video and want to see more, consider subscribing so you can be here for future projects I have planned. If you want to follow me on Twitch where I stream occasionally, check the description for that. And what the heck, I'll link my Twitter there too, just for the extra cool people. Well, that's all I've got for now, so see you next time.